listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome into a new episode of the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi. I'm Grace Remington, recapping all the NFL Week 3 action with you. Michael, I really felt the theme of the weekend was any given Sunday. It can be any team. You could win or lose anytime, anywhere. That's just the parody of the league we're at this point, and we're starting to hear the players talk about it that way. But we'll get into the underdogs as this episode goes on. One of the teams that could have been upset was the Chiefs, but they hang on late in the game against the Falcons to move to 3-0 on the season. What stood out to you in this game?
Well, you mentioned any given Sunday, and Burt Bell, the former commissioner, the first commissioner of the NFL, the man who owned the Philadelphia Eagles and started the draft when he went to Minneapolis to sign a fullback from the University of Minnesota. I think it was one of those directional schools in Minnesota. This guy was a great fullback. He went to sign him, and he got outbid, and he came back on the train that night, and he said, we need an NFL draft. We can't have this. I think the player was named Stan Koski. And so we need a draft. And so he invented the draft, but he also invented that great line on any given Sunday. I think to me, it's so true. Yesterday I had such a great day. I'm on a road trip here. Going to end up going to see Florida play Georgia. I'm going to go see Georgia play Alabama on Saturday. And so I started out, and I'm at the Greenbrier right now, which is, I don't know if you know anything about the Greenbrier. It's a magnificent place. It's where the government built a underground bunker during the Cold War so that if Congress, or if we ever got a nuclear attack, Congress could come here. And so, they built a training facility. The Saints are here. The Saints will be in here later today. They're going to practice here. A lot of NFL teams practice here. It's a magnificent resort in the Allegheny Mountains, but they have a sports book, right? And so I was in the sports book, and it was a tiny little sports book. It had maybe 2 couches and 8 chairs. It was like I was in my living room. It was so perfect. I was watching all the games, and I was enjoying it. And then I watched the night game up in the room with a bunch of friends. So I just felt like, Atlanta put so much pressure on themselves, Grace. They put so much pressure on, they put out a tweet. Well, Adam Schefter put out a tweet basically saying sources in the Falcon organization. Wonder who they could be. Super Bowl winning Terry Fontenot. Who else could it be, right? So, that this is the biggest game in Atlanta Falcon home history since 2016. Well, Arthur Blank's going in he put himself in the Hall of Fame. He's going in the Hall of Fame. And they just come off a win where they were very lucky to win that game, right? They were lucky. Nick Sirianni and his gift giving allowed them to win it. So why put any more? You got, it's this old adage, why pet the tiger? I used to say this all the time when I was at the Raiders. Don't go up to Al Davis and ask how he's doing. You don't pet a tiger. He'll bite your hand off. Well, it's the same thing. Like, don't get Patrick Mahomes more motivation to be pissed off. He'll bite your hand off. But yet they do. And then to me, I think this season can really come down to a lot of really bad decisions. Nobody's won. Where's Brendan Staley? He was the greatest coach of all time because he went for it on 4th down. Pro Football Focus said him as the 12th best coach in the NFL the first year he was in the league. Like, at what point do teams realize that maybe I should kick field goals? So I'm watching that game last night, and Andy Reid called a shitty play on 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. It was a run, and the Falcons stuffed it. And you could see Reid was really pissed. Reid doesn't show much emotion on the sideline. He's very much focused on the game. I love his demeanor. And you could tell he was really pissed off at himself. Like, he knew he made a bad call, and he just said, kick it. Like, he never turns down a field goal. He's got the best player in the league, and he doesn't turn down a field goal. And yet Raheem Morris in the 4th quarter, he turns down one on 4th and 5, and he turns one down on 4th and 1. Now, the 4th and 1, he had to go for it because he needed a touchdown to win it. But at what point do we start analyzing the games lost by these decisions, Grace? And again, I'm going to say this. I am not against analytics. I'm not. There's a place for it. But it has to be applied to the game.
Yeah, I agree with you there. There's a happy medium somewhere. Someone will discover it someday, but right now we're just going to argue back and forth about these decisions being made. Falcons had lots of opportunities.
There is no argument because the guy who is doing all the going for it on 4th, they've not won any trophies. So if this is
Okay.
if this is the argument, then the argument is it's closed. Now, maybe you could say, well, the Eagles won a Super Bowl with Doug Peterson and they went for it on fourth down. Okay, you could chalk one up to that analytics, but there has been no other team that has been this brazen and this bold like the Los Angeles Chargers under Staley, like Dougie Peterson down in Jackson. There's been no team really that has followed this analytical go for it whenever you want to go for model and has won a title. And doesn't that's all that matters is winning a title? Like, if it works so good, if you were in any business and you saw the guy who was the best at his business, Andy Reid, and you saw Bill Belichick and you saw Mike Tomlin, these guys never go for it on fourth down. These guys are pretty conservative. They take points in a game where most games are decided by 4 points or less. So I don't think I think this debate is only from voices from one side that are screaming to get recognized. That like none of the people are following that win. The Super Bowls are all that matters.
Yeah, no, that's a fair assessment. And we might as well go into that Eagles game now because 2 weeks in a row, the game has come down to the final minutes because of passing on field goals for fourth down conversions. But Michael, my question for you is, let's say these fourth down conversions start happening. I mean, would we be talking about this differently?
Well, I think if here's the reality, Nick Sirianni's 54% on fourth down. See, here's what I'm saying to you is I'm not saying don't go for it. I'm not taking the same approach that the people in analytics take, which is just look at the sheet and go. I'm not taking that approach. I think everything needs to be measured. And when you could do the tush push and it's third and inches, fourth and inches, I'm all for it. I'm completely for it. It's hard to defend. I'm saying is calculate what the flow of the game is. You're in a no-score game. You know it's a field goal. Your defense is dominating to this game. Derek Carr reverts back to the Derek Carr we all know and love, right? That when you get pressure inside of him, it's a problem. So why are we not taking points? Why are we trying a 60-yard field goal where the chances aren't very good? And then I'm going to give Derek Carr field position to move that because he's not going to drive it down the field. He was not making any plays in the pocket. What did he throw for 140 yards? So my point is, when does Sirianni stop looking at the dictum of this is what must happen and just go with the flow of the game? He doesn't call plays. Grace, at halftime, if you would have gone on Twitter, the entire city of Philadelphia wanted to have Murray. He would have not come home. There would have been people at the airport waiting to meet him. I mean, they were screaming for Bill Belichick to become the head coach at halftime, and they don't even want Belichick. Like that Philly doesn't, because of the Patriots relationship. That's so like, what? And they're screaming for him. I just don't understand his rhythm to the game. Like, feel the game, understand the game. Here's what's going on. And then look at it. I'm not saying don't. I'm saying apply it because every game is different. When you cite that stat where, this is what you should do, that's a voluminous of 1,000 games. But what about this game?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fair. And I believe you about the Philly fans up there. My relatives live in Philly. We go up there for Thanksgiving every year. And whew, man, they get heated. So I don't want to know what the city looked like the past 2 weekends. Yeah, Eagles fly is always worried. Stuck in my head after being there. Yeah,
he's labeled the liability, And I mean, look, Hurts hasn't played. He made the cut. They made 2 big plays in the game. They made the big 60-yard to Barkley, who is really the best player for the Eagles. I mean, give the Eagles credit. Now, they won with the backup line. The Becton got hurt, and so did Lane Johnson. And then they lost Devontae Smith with a concussion. So they were down players, and they fought their way back. That was a hard-fought win for the team, But to me, like, he doesn't coach offense. He doesn't coach defense. And so you got to manage the game correctly. Now, I mean, we can get anybody. You can get a robot out there and say, just go for it, just go for it, just go for it. I mean, where is the thought process? This is what we're doing here is we're basically taking computer chess and we're applying it to football, right? Because the computer, Big Blue, has 1,000 moves put into the computer. And so whatever the move spits out, that's what we do. But that doesn't take into account who his opponent is. How long was it before Big Blue could ever beat a human? Think about that. How long was it before Big Blue could beat a human? It took a long time. and they had to readjust it. They had to keep fixing it. Well, if Sirianni's going to go for it every single play, why are we paying him $5 million, $6, $7, $8 million a year? Just get a robot and say go. Why not? I mean, if that's the way, if there's no taking into account what's going on, just hire a robot, bring him out there.
I'm glad you brought up I think you mentioned the timeouts, because that's actually more concerning to me, because it could be the offensive coordinator calling these fourth down play. And I think it is, right? Like Sirianni's only job at this point is calling timeouts during a game. Yet both of these game-ending drives, he's kind of botched that too. And to me, that is more concerning than the fourth down versus field goal conversation. Because it was after that Dallas Goedert run. Yeah.
He decides to kick the 60-yarder. You're right. His use of timeouts are really horrendous too. Like there's no strategy. Again, I don't know who he's listening to. Look, the Eagles are very analytical based. They have somebody on a headset with him all the time telling him, hey, here's where the percentages are based on the numerical data. But at some point, you got to have a feel for the game. I mean, at some point, look, if that would have been the case, then all of us that were screaming for Belichick to call timeout, me included, against the Seattle, we would have called timeout and would have given Seattle time to get organized and win the game. But because he was watching the game, he didn't do it.
I feel like we do need to get something positive in here on the Eagles. You mentioned the offense, showing up big with A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith now. I felt like it was a statement performance from this defense too. Holding the NFL's darling offense, the MVP candidate, Derek Carr. Rashid Shaheed didn't have a single catch in this game.
Right, and I think to me, the other statement they made was their defensive line showed up and they came to play. I mean, Jalen Carter they couldn't block Jalen Carter. From the first play of the game until the last play, Jalen Carter was unblockable. And for the Eagles to win, that's how they have to win. Their formula is the front has to dominate, and it did in that game, Grace.
All right, we're going to take a break here. Coming up on the other side, getting into some of these underdog upsets next on the GM Shuffle.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle, presented by Smirnoff. We do game days. Please drink responsibly. The Smirnoff Co., New York, New York. Well, Michael, it was almost deja vu for this Ravens team, avoiding what could have been just the second 0-3 start in team history, allowing another fourth quarter comeback. This time to the Cowboys. The Ravens have been outscored 39-17 in the fourth quarter this season. What needs to change for them?
It's interesting that when they lose the onside kick, so Cowboys had an extra possession. They didn't get the onside kick in the game, which really hurt them. And their inability to have long drives in the fourth quarter. I mean, when you had that big of a lead, you feel like, you're basically no longer the opponent is the other team. It's the clock. How many first downs do I need to end the game? That's all you're thinking about in the fourth quarter. The Ravens got 4 first downs in the fourth quarter, but they couldn't stop them from throwing the football. I mean, I think you get tired. I know they play inside, but the heat and humidity does wear on your defense. And look, when they needed to make the play, again, this is how you evaluate teams. Fourth quarter, right? They got it. They have to get a first down, and Lamar. They run the motion across, the fly motion across, and Lamar runs quarterback power, quarterback counter up for a first down, and they win the game on that play. The Cowboys can't stop anybody's running game. I mean, every back on the Ravens averaged 6 yards a carry. So to me, it's a great win for Baltimore, but they go home with problems. They go home still worried about how are they going to handle it. And they got Buffalo coming into town, so it doesn't get any easier. But it was a good win for them. For me, for the Cowboys, is what I've been saying all along. I think the Cowboys overachieved last year. I think the reason they were so effective and that you could masquerade their big deficiencies, last year they had a 124-point differential in the first half. So nobody really could run the ball on them. But in their losses, the teams that beat them ran the football. When the game's close, you can run the ball in Dallas. What happens is you get so far behind Dallas, you can't run the ball. And I think that hid their problem. So that's why if you just look at the numbers and you don't really peel back the layer about the game, you don't see the real issues. And I mean, Dallas has significant, when you can't run the ball and you can't stop the run in the NFL, that's a real problem. And when Dak's got to throw it over 50 times, it's going to be hard for them to win. It really is. I thought Baltimore dominated the game until the game kind of got out of control and it became all pass, pass, pass. But when they needed to run the football, give them credit, they did. I thought Henry was good.
Yeah. And that first half differential for the Cowboys has completely flipped this year. They've been outscored 83-29. That's a negative 54-point differential in the first half. Well, in their last 3 home games. They face the Giants next, which could be just what the doctor ordered for this Cowboys team in terms of run defense and run game.
I mean, if they lose that one, I mean, you know, the heat's already up on poor McCarthy. I mean, the heat's going to be really up. You lose at home to the Giants. I mean, you lose on the road to the Giants on a Thursday night. They got to fix it. I mean, Micah Parsons came out and said that, you know, we're going to fix this thing. We're going to show up here. I mean, from the very start, you could tell they couldn't fix it. They're small on defense, you know, and Parsons is effective when he can rush. Parsons isn't effective when he got to play toe-to-toe in the middle of the ring. That's a hard thing to do, you know, and so you're getting all these body punches. I just thought, you know, when you can throw the ball 16 times and control the game like the Ravens did, that's impressive because you're running it well.
So the favorite hangs on in this game, but the big favorites all losing this week. Underdogs of 5.5 or more points went 4-0 straight up and against the spread on Sunday. They are now 13-2 against the spread overall this season with 9 straight up wins. Before we get into the specifics of these games, why do you think the Underdogs are cashing at such a high rate this year?
Because I think we don't really know enough about these teams. I think all these teams are predicated on paper. I think everything we do is predicated on this is what this team should look like. This is what they do. When in reality, until we watch them after 3 weeks, you have no idea. I mean, look, the Chicago Bears on paper, everybody had their over total wins. I mean, they look great on paper. They got all these great receivers. Of course, you can't block anybody. You can't block a soul, right? And so, you know, but we were talking about them not blocking anybody on the GM Shuffle for a whole year. Like there are a Madden team. You know, they're a Madden team. Same thing with the Miami Dolphins. They're a Madden team. They look great. They can't block anybody. Tua hides all their issues in terms of getting rid of the football, but when they play against a good team, so I think you have to really reestablish your power rankings, and I think it gives you an advantage with the book. I mean, look, Denver goes into Tampa, and Tampa's coming off the win that they probably shouldn't have had if you look at the box score. Detroit's 1-for-7 down there, right? And they're flying high, and they come out flat. You know, they come out flat. No team was flatter than the Raiders coming out there. I mean, there's Carolina with no quarterback with Andy Dalton. Now they got Marvin Lewis on the coaching staff, right? So if anybody knows Andy Dalton, anybody could stand in front of the team and say, fellas, I went to 7 playoff games and Andy Dalton was my quarterback for most of them, right? Here's why this is going to be a huge cave and get the team ready. But they came out flat. It's hard. It's really hard. If you don't have, that's why the separation between the good teams and the average teams is really about focus. Who wants to keep getting better? Who's going to, you know, I promise you in Kansas City, I'm sure they're happy they beat Atlanta, but I'm sure they know they got to get better. See, that's the key. Yeah. You got to win the game, but no, you got to get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what all the Bucs players were saying after the game, that they kind of underestimated the Broncos. Mike Evans himself said we came out flat. Someone else, I forget who at this point, but they said the Broncos were a pissed off 0-2 team. It didn't matter who was next on the schedule. We just happened to be the team that was next, and we weren't up for it. So I feel like there's 2 parts of this, Michael. You mentioned there's these preseason champions on paper. So that's a perception thing. But then I think the on-field product is closer because these defenses are too good. I mean, they're lighter, they're faster, so they're able to keep up with all these skill players, right? And I feel like that's contributing to all these closer games as well.
And teams can't convert third and short. I mean, let's be honest here. Teams can't convert third and short. They're in shotgun, offset shotgun, and then, you know, like when Andy got pissed off on that play I referred to earlier, it was an off shotgun. They ran an inside zone, and there were 3 people in the backfield. You know, and so I think a lot of that is, I think situationally, teams are not prepared to understand the elements that go towards winning. When you win, you have a closer. You have somebody who can get 3rd and 1. When you win games, you have the ability to convert those third and shorts, which you do it really at a high level. We all talk about, well, we got to be in third and manageable, but then we get in 3rd and 2 and we can't convert. We can't convert. I mean, last night Atlanta's in 3rd and 1. They can't convert. They try to run inside. They get stuffed. Then they try to run a sweep. I don't know why, but they did. And so go watch all these games. You can't convert it. And then some teams go for it on 4th down. The Lions couldn't convert a 4th and short, which really affected them. I mean, Arizona tried to convert a 3rd, and they ruled it on the field as a 1st down, but it wasn't when they went back there. Those are killers. And as much as people are going for it on 4th down, if you're not really prepared to be a physical team, to line up in there and pound it, really have physicality and get those 1st downs. I mean, think about it. Michigan goes for it on 4th down against USC. Is there a softer team than USC? I doubt it, right? They run a lead play out of 22 personnel. They run a lead play out of 22. Like, it's the worst call you could possibly make in football, but yet the opponent is so soft, the kid walks in the end zone. Like, to me, that's what's wrong with the NFL is there's not enough physicality in these short yardage, and nobody's practicing short yardage. No one's practicing short yardage, goal line. No, and so teams are able to the defense is gaining an advantage.
So looking at these 4 games where the big dog upset outright, Giants beat the Browns 21-15 as a 6.5-point dog. Denver beats the Buccaneers 26-7 as a 6-point dog. The Rams beat the Niners in an electric game 27-24 as a 6.5-point dog. Carolina beats the Raiders 36-22 as a 5.5-point dog. I feel like Bucks was the only one that people really didn't see coming. They were a big pick in the Survivor contest. But any of these 4 a real shock to you?
No, because I think when you looked at it, look, Cleveland won a game and Jacksonville had no business winning it. I mean, Deshaun Watson's been horrible. Let's be clear. He's been horrible. They have no offense in Cleveland. They have zero offense. They can't move the ball. Cue up my man John. He was laughing yesterday. He wasn't even mad. Remember that guy we had on the show?
Oh, I saw his new video. Yeah,
his new video. I retweeted it for him. So I mean, they're horrible on offense. Now, I was disappointed that they couldn't slow down and stop. But look, they had a chance. Their 4th quarter. It's a 2015 game, and the Giants only got 2 first downs in the 4th quarter. That's all they got. They didn't convert a 3rd down in the 4th quarter. But because of the inability of Deshaun in the offense, they can't throw the ball. I mean, I keep writing in my notes every week, Cleveland cannot throw the ball. Cleveland cannot throw the ball. They can't throw it, I think where Denver surprised people is how well Nick's played. They ran Nick's. He's improved. Like, between Nick's and Caleb Williams, Nick's has improved. Caleb Williams, the poor kid, they can't run the ball. They're asking him to throw it 53 times on the road in a 1-score game. Like, what are we doing here? But you know why they're asking them to do that? It's because we built an all-Madden team, because we got Roma Dunze, we got Keenan Allen, we got DeAndre Carter, we got DJ Moore. We're just going to throw this thing all over the place. Football is a contact sport. You got to control the line of scrimmage. Remember, Ryan Poles said this was the best line the Bears have had in a long time. Those are his words, not mine. I think that line sucks, but that's what they say. So I think a lot of it comes down to these games because of these lines, the surprise that happens in their offensive line. Like, the Giants held on for dear life. Credit them. They won the game. They'll probably win 2 or more down the road. Not many more. Carolina, I mean, they had to change a quarterback, and it was like the Raiders didn't even expect it was going to happen. But that's the Raiders. They're smoking cigars after wins. Everybody's happy. See, Antonio Pierce is going to learn that, it's a little harder now as the leader of the team to get him to go than it was filling in for the guy you took over for.
Yeah, and then he had that interesting quote after the game, people on defense making business decisions in that 4th quarter. He's going to have to make some business decisions of his own. What did you make of that?
What does that mean? Well, I mean, what does it mean? His job is to prepare him, right? Like, look, this is not about – I don't think this was a player loss in Las Vegas. I don't think it was a coaching loss in Las Vegas. I think it was an organizational loss in Las Vegas. I think they lost it as an – they celebrated – they acted like they'd never won before when they beat Baltimore. And usually when teams act like that, they lose the next week no matter who they play.
Okay. So Raiders trending down, but quite a few teams trending up. 4 3-0 teams to start the season. Which ones are legit? We're getting into that next.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle, where we are getting to the bottom of these 3-0 teams, figuring out which ones are legit, which ones are just a facade. It's the Steelers, Seahawks, Vikings, and Chiefs. But first, Michael, the biggest news out of that Steelers-Chargers game was Justin Herbert leaving. He said after the game that he could not push off his injured foot, so he aggravated his ankle injury, whatever that may be, and this is after dealing with plantar fasciitis. I don't know if I said that right, but that's okay. During training camp. So you would think he's already playing on one foot.
You're allowed to make as many pronunciation errors because I make them all. Plantar fasciitis. But I don't know how he can.
Yeah, that was good.
I don't know how he can throw it. To me, there was a lot of question whether he was going to even play this week. And that was fair because I think, with the fact that Kansas City's coming to town, you wanted to try to maybe get 10 extra days to keep him healthy. But he tried to go, he went, and he just couldn't do it. The Chargers defense played as, they played. But once the dam broke, it broke. I don't know how he's going to play. The line this week is already opened up as the Chargers are a 7-point home dog, which tells me that, that the book doesn't expect them to play. And, of course, we're not doctors here, but, look, that's a hard one. And Pittsburgh, give them credit, right? I mean, this is the power of coaching. I mean, Justin Fields is playing well. They've coached him to know where he wants to throw with the ball. He's playing with more confidence. They're not asking him to be the MVP of the league. They're not putting the team on his shoulders. They have some physicality in their offensive line. They run it. They don't mind a punt. They know their defense is good. And they play complementary football. And the kid has done a really good job. Give him credit. He's done a really good job of – people get so offended when you say, well, he's being managed correctly. Every quarterback in the league has to be managed. They all do. They all do. I mean, Patrick Mahomes isn't playing any good. They're running the football. They're managing him too. So to me, that's not a knock. That's just a player accepting coaching. It's self-awareness. I think that's really important. And so Pittsburgh, it doesn't surprise me they're 3-0. Because I thought they would beat Atlanta in the opener. I think to me, when you watched them play, you get the sense that, they went on the road in week 2 and they were able to find a way to win that game against Denver out there. I thought that could be a problem, but, they went through that and then they played a Charger team. So they played Bo Nix, as you like, they played Bo Nix, they played Herbert Taylor Heineke, and they played Kirk Cousins, who, to me, I don't care what anybody says, doesn't look 100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it feels like we're watching Justin Fields mature before our eyes. Mm-hmm. Obviously, that week 1 spray chart that went viral where he was only hitting the sidelines, it's different now. He's now taken middle of the field passes. He completed his first 10 passes to start this game. The one interception he had ricocheted off a bunch of hands, so not completely his fault there. But Michael, do you think Russell Wilson ever sees the field for the Steelers?
Yeah. No, I mean, look, he threw it 32 times in this game. To me, this is one of Justin Fields' best games of his career. I felt like, and I've never been a Fields guy. I've always he's not protected the football, but I think what he's done is embrace coaching. And I don't see how you give the job back to Russell. I'm not saying you're going to turn around and look. It's going to be really interesting. We're talking 3-0 teams here, and 2 of these 3-0 teams have quarterbacks that don't have contracts for next year. Right? Sam Darnold's a free agent. Yeah. Justin Fields is a free agent. And so there's a lot of money on this table that's at stake going into next year because of it. Who's going to pay Darnold? Who's going to pay Fields? Because I can tell you this, even the teams that drafted quarterbacks are going to be looking for quarterbacks. Is Carolina going to be in the market for a quarterback? Or are they going to re-sign Andy Dalton thinking they've got their guy? I mean, there's money out there, and now the way these guys are playing, they just got to pick it up, right? Now, Derek Carr's not going to be a free agent, so he's playing good. But to me, what's significant about these 2 3-0 teams, Minnesota and Pittsburgh, is they don't have these quarterbacks are on a contract. Now, Minnesota's different because J.J. McCarthy is there. So you have to ask yourself, if you're sitting here, this Minnesota franchise, Donald, if he's that good. So they can hold to get somebody, because somebody will pay a price, right? How do you get rid of the guy who's leading you into really playing well in a big game in Green Bay? I mean, Fields is easy. Pittsburgh doesn't have a quarterback. So Pittsburgh can make the decision, do we sign him or we don't? But I think that's the true story of whether who's going to be the player. I don't know. Can Seattle sustain it? Seattle, I don't know if they can. Like you said to me on the air today, Seattle's beaten what? They beat Bo Nix. They beat
Bo Nix in his debut.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Go ahead. And they beat Skylar Thompson, who they beat the shit out of that poor kid. Yep. If I was Tyler Thompson's father, I would have called Mike McDaniel and asked him, is there any way you could protect my son? Like he was, the disc jockey was just letting him fucking get killed. He was tuning up records on the sideline, like spin another one, baby. He had it going, Like at some point, when does somebody recognize that Miami is the most undisciplined, poorly coached team out there? I mean, they're just so undisciplined. But it's okay. Everybody's happy. Don't worry about them, Grace.
Well, and that Miami game against the Seahawks could have been worse because they were in the red zone 3 times, came away with no points because they don't have a quarterback. So that's kind of another thing that kind of overvalues the Seahawks for me at this point. I mean, good for them. Our producer Elliot says, don't apologize for wins. I love that phrase. So 3-0, yeah, take it. And you took the over on their win totals. That's great for you.
Yeah, well, I liked them. I didn't think they'd be 3-0, I'll be honest. I thought that they would struggle to beat Miami, but they probably would have had Tua played. I almost lost my shit in the sports book yesterday. I'm sitting there, and there's a bunch of guys in front of me, and when the disc jockey decided to go for it on 4th down in his own territory in Seattle, I think it was in his own territory with Skylar Thompson, and the game was still, it was 17-3. It was 17-3 at that time, right? And he's going to go for it. I almost lost my shit. I'm like, are you kidding me? And then they called timeout, and then he still went for it. I mean, it had to be the dumbest thing I've ever seen. Like, where are we going? Like, we can't get 3 yards with Skylar Thompson. I thought they would go to Huntley. This is when they put this. Tim Boyle's in the game now. That's what happened. Tim Boyle was in the game. And I said to the guys in front of me, I'm like, does he fucking realize Tim Boyle's in the fucking game? Like, does he even, or is he just spinning records over there? Like, what is he doing? What is he doing? I know he's got his Bentley. I know he's got his new car. But I mean, like, what are you doing? Of course, everybody loves him. Nobody says that. He just got a contract extension. He hasn't beaten a good team in 3 years. He's on his 3rd defensive coordinator. Let's not talk about that. They can't stop anybody on defense. I mean, Seattle, the game was over when it was 7. That was one of my picks on Russo. Stupidly, I gave out Miami because I thought with 10 days the DJ would have a good set list. I thought he would have a lot of good music going on up there, right? And instead, it comes out and it's just horrendous. But this isn't all the DJ's fault either. Chris Greer's got to step on the table on this one too. They got no offensive lineman on that team. But I know we're talking about 3-0 teams here, but Seattle deserves credit for beating them because Seattle didn't beat themselves. The only way Seattle would have lost that game, remember when Geno Smith turned the ball over in the first quarter, right? And the kid couldn't get it in the end zone. They had a kick. Of course, they had a kick because they got penalties. I forget how many. There must have been. I want to say that game. Hold on, Grace. 1 second. Yeah, I want to see it here because, they had 11 penalties for 86 yards. And Seattle had 11 penalties for 92 yards. It was a penalty fest. They were spinning penalties left and right.
Disc jockey is perfect for his new Miami persona. That wouldn't have flown when he was in San Francisco.
No, but
another
cool,
one
man.
of your perfect nicknames.
He's cool. He's hip. He's cool. He's got curly hair. Everything's cool. Nobody's going to look at his 1-loss examination or when do I beat a good team? Why would we? Why would we? And now he's on his 3rd defense. And defensively, I figured, well, Buffalo only scored. I'm the idiot who picked them, right? So I don't know why I should be taking.
I honestly didn't think that was a bad pick. I thought that was one of those market overreactions because I thought it was more like we were overrating Tua. Like he was not worth 7 points to the spread. I think that's how much that game's.
That's kind of what I felt like. I thought that they could at least. But Tyreek Hill's in Never Neverland. I mean, you can't find him. And so there's no time to throw the ball. And, for all this talk about McDaniel being this elite run game coach, I mean, they could run the ball. they were really they had 205 yards. They averaged 3.7 a play. I mean, look, I know he's playing without a quarterback, but that's all part of all our jobs. I mean, look, Matt LaFleur's playing without a quarterback, and he's dominating, and he's playing with Malik Willis, who I didn't think was going to be very good. And they turned around and found ways to win 2 games because they ran the single wing. I mean, the disc Jace, he's just spinning the same albums if he's got 2 in the game.
Okay, so we're a little low on Steelers, Seahawks. Chiefs got lucky, but probably deserved to be there. Vikings, though, this is a 3-0 team that is legitimate. Yeah. They won on the road, beat the NFC's best team, beat one of the AFC's best team. What's your favorite thing about the Vikings so far?
I think they play good complementary football. They're making plays down the field. I think Darnold has responded. Look, they saw the locker room last night. I mean, they respond to him. I think the players really believe in him, and they've protected the football. And their defense is, I think, they've done a really good job, and I credit Kevin O'Connell, and Brian Flores. They both are not – he's not just all-out blitzing on every single play. He understands his limitations on who they are defensively. Greenart was great yesterday. The front – Van Ginkel – Van Ginkel was with him in Miami. He knows how good I tried to get 2 teams to sign Van Ginkel last offseason. I don't understand. When he went back to Miami, I think Van Ginkel's a really good player. He just makes a lot of plays. San Francisco's going to score a touchdown on him, probably on 4th down, but Van Ginkel tips the ball. Yesterday he gets a sack. I think they've done a really good job. Credit the front office there. They've done a good job of building a team around the scheme, and the players have responded to the coaching, and the players are playing really well. I think they're for real. Be anxious to see them against Green Bay this week. I don't think it's a fluke. Look, both runners average over 5 yards a carry. And one thing about this offensive line for Minnesota, they've always been able to pass protect. They always have. And think about this. They're 3-0, and they signed Darnold for Cousins. Who's playing better?
Yeah, that's a great point. And statistically, it actually is the Vikings' biggest win in a half decade. They hadn't won a game by 24 or more points since 2019. Wow. That's 5 years. And it came against the Texans as a short underdog. Wow. So good for them. Love the Vikings. I'll always like them because they were my week 1 survivor pick. So I'll be keeping an eye on them for the rest of the season. Yeah. All right, coming up next, a few more games we got to get to before week 3 comes to a close, and our awards for this past weekend.
You're listening to the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN.
Welcome back into the GM Shuffle, where we continue our NFL Week 3 recap. The Lions bouncing back after somewhat of an unlucky loss to the Bucs in Week 2. This time they beat the Cardinals and Kyler Murray in a 20-13 win as a short favorite. Michael, what did you think about the way they stopped the mayor of Munchkinland?
Well, I thought they did a great job defensively. Aaron Glenn deserves a ton of credit. They rushed him. They saw what the Rams didn't do, and they weren't about to go down that road. They did a really good job of keeping him in the pocket, making him play quarterback. He got out a few times, but they always had somebody trailing to come force him to throw the football. But I thought they did a really good job defensively. And look, they scored 20 points in the first half. They don't score another point and still win the game. They carried the ball. They had 8 minutes in the fourth quarter. They were able to. Goff was very inconsistent. I think Detroit gets bored at times with their games because if they just wanted to run and pound the rock and play action, they could be really good. Goff throws a turnover on a play action pass. He never saw the guy. They run a reverse. They lose 8 yards. They had a chance to put the game away in the fourth quarter, and they never did until they got the ball back after Arizona had to settle for the field goal to cut it to 20-13. And then they got that first down on 3rd and 9. I mean, Goff makes a great throw to Amar St. Brown, and he gets it in there. So, look, I thought they were really good. I think, to me, this was another example, Grace, of a line that overreacted. Everybody went crazy on Arizona last week, what he did with the Rams. And certainly he was great against the Rams, but nobody who has any smarts about football is going to let him play like that. Everybody who plays Arizona is going to rush 4, not let their ends go up the field, squeeze him internally, force this bad offensive line to hold up and make him play big. That's just a recipe. Now, he's going to get out a couple times, but you're going to hold him to 13 points. You're not going to let him score 37 points on you. So credit to Detroit. To me, Detroit, if they just ever got into a rhythm where they just really say, okay, we're going to keep doing this, and they know they can't let Goff throw it 53 times. I thought it was a good win for Detroit. I really did. I thought they played well.
Right.
The execution on that trick play was tremendous. It was really good. You could tell they practice.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Lions defense finally showed up. Aiden Hutchinson, by the way, has a sack in 5 straight games. That's a Lions franchise record. Lions had a balanced rushing attack between Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I really felt like Jared Goff was kind of the only missing piece in this one. He has 4 interceptions through the first 3 games of the season. That's the most to start a season for him. For context, he didn't throw his 4th interception until the 7th game last year.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe it's just a volume thing for him.
I think they can do everything. See, this is the problem. When you can do everything really well, you try to do everything really well, and so they can throw it and they can run it, but they really need to get an identity. This is who we are. Their identity is usually hard play action, throw it. They don't want Goff. They know they need to keep Goff clean in the pocket. They know they need to allow him some space. And I think they got to stop trying to out trick people. They can just physically beat up people if they want. And Montgomery's a good back. Gibbs gives them another change of pace player. The roster's good. I think defensively they've improved their team. And there's a couple really questionable pass interference calls, I thought, but nonetheless they went against them and they still won. I mean, you hold this Arizona team to 13 points. You don't let James Conner run the ball on you. That's good. Excuse me.
You are excused. Plenty of exciting moments in this past week, but let's get into our DraftKings crowning moments. Who wins that?
Well, it's got to be the Rams. I mean, they're down 10 points with 6:30 to go. And when you're down 10 with 6:30 to go, everything has to go right. And it did. They're able to get the game. They San Francisco's got a chance to cut the game to make the game a 3-point score game, and they can't do it. They missed the field goal just wide to right, and so they cost them that one. Then they let the Rams come back. They either were tired or their defense just doesn't have enough juice, and Stafford starts making plays. The Atwell starts catching balls down the field, and now we're into a game, and now it's tied up at 24, and the Niners have the ball with a chance to win it. And they throw a great ball to Ronnie Bell, and he drops it. And, of course, they got a punt. Their special teams don't play well on the punt. They return it. So everything went right for the Rams, or else they're 0-3, which is interesting because I think when I looked at that this week, Grace, I think they're going back to when I looked at this, when I was putting the lines in this morning early here at the Greenbrier, I was shocked to see the line. Yeah, they're going back to play Chicago, and they're a 2.5-point dog to Chicago. Think about that. They're a 2.5-point dog to Chicago on the road. I mean, I know Chicago's 0-3. It just shows you that I think that win was so improbable that it didn't deter the book, right? I mean, it really didn't deter the book. I mean, Chicago's a 2.5. How could Chicago be a 2.5-point favorite against anybody?
Yeah, did you see there was one play down on the goal line where like 4 of the 5 Chicago linemen were laying down on the ground? Like that's how bad they got beat.
They
so looked like stuffed animals who just got thrown on the ground.
They don't have a team. Look, you're in Chicago. You got to be big and physical. And now look, if you're Ryan Poles, watch that Minnesota team, watch the Green Bay team, watch Detroit. Those are your competition. You got to be physical. I mean, how do you beat those teams? And look, they played against a quarterback, and we're going to get to him on Thursday. But Anthony Richardson is just, to me, he should be the poster child for amateur golf. Really, he should be. Because all those guys that play amateur golf, the reason they go back to play amateur golf is because they hit a great shot. And even though they scored 120 on the round, that one shot makes them want to go play golf again, right? They just want to go back and play golf some more. Anthony Richardson is the PGA quarterback. He has one play where you say, God, that guy's great. And I say it too. I'm just as guilty. I had somebody text me today and said, why don't you rag it on Anthony Richardson? Because I see this athletic talent, but I never see a quarterback. That interception he threw in the end zone was just a disaster. And he's got a 3rd down throw. It's wide open on the sideline, and he airmails it by 25 feet. Like, at some point, he's going to have to either get reined in and play better. I mean, that game shouldn't have been close, but it was. But we'll talk about him later. But to me, It's that one play with Richardson that you just say, wow, he's really good, isn't he? And then you don't see it again. It's the Florida game. It's the Ram game. It's the Houston deep throws. But there's too many strikeouts in between.
Mm-hmm. No, I was thinking that too this week because, I mean, I come from covering high school football recruiting in college where they recruit guys as quote-unquote athletes. You obviously don't do that in the NFL, but I do wonder if Anthony Richardson has to be converted to another position at some point. That's a whole nother conversation we can get to.
Yeah, it is.
By the way, the Rams' comeback win was their biggest since 2012 against Washington. Some trivia for you. Who was the tight ends coach for Washington during that game?
Sean McVay.
There you go. And who was the OC for Washington?
Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, no, I knew you would know that. That trivia is too easy for you. Okay, so Rams are the DraftKings crowning moment. Crowning Moments is presented by DraftKings. Submit your winning bets for a chance to be featured. DraftKings, the crown is yours. And if you had placed an in-game moneyline bet on the Rams, you could have cashed out at 25-1 odds. Pretty nice. They were plus 220 on the pregame line. Let's get into the rest of your awards, Michael, starting with the fraud of the week.
Well, I mean, there could be anybody. The Saints have to qualify that. The Raiders' defense could qualify here too. But I think the Saints, with all that hype that we'd seen, and I expected them to play better, especially against the Philly defense that was soft on the edges. And give Vic Fangio credit; he got the defense to play better, and their defensive front played much better. But to me, the Saints, it's the same recipe. You pressure Derek Carr inside. You force him to be uncomfortable early in the game. The first play of the game, when Jalen Carter became the Jalen Carter that we all know he's capable of being, it was like, you better hold on to your ass. This could get ugly here. And it did. And then unfortunately, the Saints know the limitations of Carr. The league knows it. And I think that's what happened to the Saints offense.
Yeah, he was 8 for 15 for 59 yards going into that fourth quarter with no passes to Rashid Shaheed. So the Saints no longer America's darling. Okay, your Fred Palermo best game plan.
Well, I think you got to give it to the Panthers. I mean, there's no question with Andy Dalton coming in there and putting it together after they took all the heat for benching Bryce Young, which they still deserve. I mean, look, nobody would argue if Andy Dalton was the best quarterback at training camp and they started him. Because if he's the best quarterback, play him. But this whole notion that, we love what we've seen out of him, and then next thing you know, I don't know what to make of the Panthers. I'm not sure they're that good, because I think the Raiders just have no ability to have any sustained consistency. Remember, intensity impresses, consistency transforms. And NFL teams transform themselves when they're consistent. And the Raiders just violate that. They have no consistency at all. Of course, they overreact to all the wins. I mean, they're smoking cigars, acting all happy. Now, now the head coach got to put his foot down. He got to come in there and say, fellas, but he's not been putting his foot down too much before this.
Andy Dalton, the first quarterback this season to throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. So Antonio Pierce got that to hang his hat on as well. Okay, how about your award for On the Lamb?
Well, the Cowboy run defense, it's just been I mean, look, let's face it, Grace. They played 3 home games, the playoff game, and then New Orleans and the Ravens, and they haven't stopped either. I think 3 of those offenses they haven't stopped. So this isn't just Mike Zimmer's outdated with the scheme. This isn't that Dan Quinn was going to go get the Washington job. This isn't that something else was going on. They're bad. Their run defense, their run fits, they're just not good. They're not good enough in the front to really compensate for it. And, New York catches them this week. They're only a 4.5-point favorite against New York. Now, I know New York's home, but to me, New York struggles in the secondary. I mean, New York got the best team they could play was Cleveland because Cleveland can't pass the ball. And New York's weakness is their pass defense.
And how about if you don't know, now you know?
The NFC North is the best division in football. I think there's no question. I think there are 3 really good teams and 3 teams that are capable of all going to the Super Bowl if they continue to improve because they look like they have everything you need that Super Bowl teams can do. Convert third down, make big plays, pass rush the quarterback, make the quarterback uncomfortable, Grace.
Yeah, Lions still the favorite, Vikings close behind in the division odds, and then Packers they can keep winning with Malik Willis, let Jordan Love get healthy, they're dangerous too.
Yeah. No
All right,
question.
that's going to be a wrap. Yeah, that's going to do it for us here on the GM Shuffle. Thank you for listening. Make sure you download and subscribe wherever you get your pods. Give us a thumbs up on the DraftKings YouTube page. For Michael Lombardi, I'm Grace Remington. See you next time.